Nothing to Say, the Fans Podcast. Is episode 138. Took a little bit of a hiatus last week. Had a lot of stuff going on, but we're back this week. Got quite a few topics to get to. Some NFL, some NBA, some entertainment. Going to hit all three markets in this episode. But Sam, how was your time away? I know Jenna was gone, so you had the whole place to yourself for like 400 days. How was that?
It was what a time. Played so much golf. Caught up on every single show. The Boys, Kenobi. It finished F1. Was able to catch a couple F1 races pretty much, and it was a good time. But definitely glad to have her back.
Yeah, you should have led with that. And then
no, she'll get it. She gets it. But all that other stuff was important too. And then the fact that we took this long break last week means that this show is going to be slam packed with everything.
Yeah. So topics for today include quick thoughts, because we didn't film right after the draft. We filmed before the draft, and then
we didn't even preview the draft.
Yeah. So yeah, terrible show. So we never got to really give our thoughts, not necessarily on the whole draft, but, you know, it's pretty well known on this show if you've been listening for a while that we're Kings fans. So we never got to give our thoughts on the Keegan Murray selection. So we'll talk about that real quick right off the top. Then there was some big news in the NFL with Baker Mayfield being traded to Carolina. We'll hit quickly on the KD and the Kyrie scenario and that debacle that happened. And then we'll wrap it up with the Obi-Wan Show thoughts. And then next week we'll probably have at least a boys review and hopefully a Love and Thunder review as well for Thor. So, all right. So let's kick it off with the Keegan Murray Sacramento Kings draft pick. So just to recap, the California Classic just recently concluded within the past few days. Murray finished the California Classic by averaging 19.7 points, 8 rebounds, 1.3 steals a game on 51% shooting from the field, including 43% from the 3-point line. He led all players in scoring and field goals made, 7.7 per game, and was second in rebounding. So, Sam, before I give my thoughts, I want to give you the floor on what your thoughts were, not only with Murray's performance, but also your draft night thoughts. What went through your head when you saw that he was going to be coming to Sacramento?
Yeah, I wasn't super aware of really what, as he's rocking the Kings, of what Keegan Murray would really look like in the NBA. I think it was promising when it seemed like the analysis coming out was he was one of the most NBA ready skill-wise coming out of probably the top 10 prospects. And I think we've seen that right from the start. I think him and Chet Holmgren have probably looked the best out of the really top NBA prospects through early in this summer league. So I think that's a huge sign for the Kings that it really didn't take long for Keegan to ingratiate himself with a longer 3-point line. And he's even pulling up for a little deeper than NBA range. And I think that's such an encouraging sign for Kings fans that his ability to shoot in college has really been able to translate seemingly early on into his NBA career.
Yeah, so forgive me real quick. I'm going to pull up exactly what the draft order was. Okay, so I have it right here. So I know a lot of people were, at least initial reactions were, everybody wanted Jaden Ivey from Purdue.
Mm-hmm.
But my whole thought process with that was with Fox and Mitchell and just trading Halliburton. Maybe, who knows what the ceilings for any of these guys is going to be. And let's even say that Ivy ends up being the better player, which nobody knows at this point how that's going to turn out. The Kings didn't need another guard. They had 3, and they traded one of them. So to draft another one when you have somebody who's ready and available at the forward position, which is something you've severely been. I understand Harrison Barnes has been a really good addition to the Kings, but he can also play the 4. But having a true 3 is something that they really haven't had in a long time. I mean, the last one that I can think of was like Rudy Gay.
That's true.
And
Yeah, I think he's definitely the last one that they've had.
right, and I know that him and Harrison kind of are in the same vein in the sense that they can play the 4 as well. Keegan, I'm sure, could if they decided to go really small, but he's more of a 3. And with Fox and Mitchell, I was super happy to see that they drafted a forward. I didn't know much about him, but I did some reading on him that night, and I wanted to hear the reaction from the analyst. That's really what I was paying attention to, because so many times as a Raider fan, you listen and you go, who in the first round? Like everybody, all these analysts have the same name that the Raiders should pick. And then they go, that seemed like a reach. So like it's happened every year. And to hear the analyst go, this was a really smart pick. He's, like you said, he's very NBA ready. I was like, perfect. We don't need a guy every team would want a guy to go out and score 50 points a game, but you draft, I think the smart thing to do is to draft based on your team's needs, not on necessarily what you want. And they needed a 3. So to have a young front of Fox, Mitchell, Murray, and even Sabonis now, that's a good solid group to move forward with. I don't know what that looks like in terms of record, but that's something that I can be enthusiastic about as a fan.
Yeah, I think this is the first time in the last decade that they've picked a true forward, like a true 3, in the first round. I mean, all that I can think of is like your Bagleys, Cousins, and Papianis at one point, and Harry Giles and Jason Thompson, and all these big forwards. Or on the other side, it's Fox, Tyreek Evans, Stauskas, Ben McLemore. Like it's either clear guards or clear big men. And now with this guy, he with his ability to rebound, at least early on, it's only 3 games, right? But it's still encouraging that I'd rather him play well in these first 3 games than play terrible. And you're like sitting there like, oh, it's only 3 games. No need to worry. But I think the fact that he's really played well is super encouraging. I think it's just something different that the Kings haven't done in the myriad of first round picks that they've had in the last 15 years that have been high. So would I have traded down with the Pacers to the 6th pick if they were to bundle that with Malcolm Brogdon and potentially even draft Keegan Murray there? Who knows? I mean, it depends what Detroit was thinking at 5, but the reports, and they're just reports coming out of the proposed trade opportunities, that especially with the Pacers, because the Pacers and Kings were linked in a couple different ways with proposed trades of a lot of pieces coming towards Sacramento for not a lot giving up. And when that all came out initially, I was like, oh man, that feels like a missed opportunity. But if Keegan Murray turns out to be everything that Monty McNair thinks he will be, then who are we to even say he's wrong?
Yeah, and he hit last year on Mitchell.
He said the last 2 years.
Yeah. So he's got a good track record for us. And yeah, so it'd be interesting. I mean, we would never know, but if they could have traded down to 6, I wonder if that meant that maybe the Pistons were looking at Murray.
Yeah, they were just looking at whoever was left of the top 5, because I think that was the big thing coming into this. The top 5 was set. It was just what order they were going in.
Right. So I wonder if the Pistons did have an eye on Murray, and we're going to be happy with Ivy regardless. But I mean, I felt really good after that, excuse me. I was like, okay, you filled a position, you filled a gap in the team, a clear gap. And as a fan, that's really all I could have asked for. Like there's a problem and you fixed it. So now let's move on to the next one and let's just keep patching it up until there aren't as many holes.
Yeah, I think clear strength is, I think he easily plays off of Fox and Sabonis and their two-man game, to where if they're drawing a lot of attention, he can sit there and take spot up threes. I think that's huge. He's already demonstrated an ability to do that, and hopefully he stays hot from three. An area of concern for me is he seems a little slower on the defensive end, and it seems like it's a little difficult for him to stay in front of guys. He's lengthy for sure, but when you start putting him up against the elite of the lead in the small forward position, with guys that are going to be packing a lot more weight than he is at this point and are going to be maybe a little quicker as well, I think it's going to be tough for him to initially guard in this league at the three position.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the three to me is the freak athlete position of the NFL. They're like the midfielders in soccer, in that sense. So they're the freak of natures. They're your LeBrons, your Giannis's, your KDs who fit the three position but play 1 through 5. And Murray does not play 1 through 5. I think he's got the ability to go up to 2 if they needed to, and maybe down to 4 if they were going really small. But he definitely feels like a traditional 3 in that sense. I mean, we'll see. Everything's encouraging, at least on the front end of his performance so far in Sacramento. So fingers crossed. I mean, I'm rooting for him.
You couple his play with the signings of Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter. I mean, everything's looking up in Sacramento. The biggest need going into this offseason was 3-point shooting, and it seems like they're answering it a little bit.
Yeah, I don't want Kings fans to start running out and guaranteeing that we're going to be in the playoffs or anything like that. I saw that video.
You're too late. You saw that.
I saw that video and I loved it. Believe me, I was all in on the let's get 40 wins. We're going to the playoffs. All of that.
Yeah.
And I get, and that's what's fun about Sacramento fans. I mean, we're kind of like hopelessly optimistic every season. But
I showed Jenna that video, and she was like, "Isn't it 40 wins? Doesn't that mean like you didn't even win half of the games that year?" I was like, "Yeah, but the Kings haven't done that in like 15 years. So 40 wins would be pretty incredible."
40 wins would be awesome. I'd be ecstatic if they got 40 wins. So I mean, again, I think all Kings fans would be hoping for, at least in realistic terms, just let's make the play-in and let's see what we do from there. Like, let's give yourself a chance to be there.
Yeah, we're definitely going to do this a later date, but looking at the West standings, at least right now, if we're assuming that Damian Lillard is going to be healthy and all these teams are pretty much going to go in healthy, Kings are going to have a fight at 10-9, pretty much. If they play their best, I think they're going to have a fight at 10-9, and that's, oh my God, the West is loaded, especially with Minnesota making that big deal to revamp. I'd still put Utah ahead of Sacramento, even though they lost Gobert. I mean, it's tough.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's stay in that same breath. I know I mentioned we were going to do Baker after the Murray thing, but we're already talking about the NBA, so let's just continue that talk. There have been a lot of, okay, so actually let's back up. The KD and Kyrie stuff that have been happening, obviously, that seems like it's going to blow up. It hasn't yet. But that does feel like it's going to blow up. And, there have been links to Kyrie going to the Lakers. I know Lillard kind of was trying to magic wand KD to Portland. I don't know where either of them are going to end up. But, I mean, you're talking about the fight at 10-9. I mean, think about if Kyrie went to the Lakers. The Lakers didn't even make the playoffs last year. So now you throw them into the mix, I'm assuming. Because, I mean, you got to count on the health of everybody or if Kyrie wants to play. And hell, if KD did end up in Portland, oh my God.
Well, if he goes to, it's either, I don't know if Portland, I haven't really heard that Portland's an
I don't
actual
think it's a thing, but at least
possibility.
I know that was the first place that like was kind of like jokingly thrown out there. And I was like, if he comes to the West, again, like,
Well, it's either Phoenix is a real possibility,
yep,
Golden
Golden
State,
State.
or Miami are
I
like
would
the
love to see him in
three
Miami.
biggest possible, but like Phoenix would be really interesting. That would surely put them over the hump, no doubt about it. And if he
Yeah.
goes back to Golden State, which looking at the package they would have to give up for KD, they're giving up all their depth
Yeah.
virtually, but they're still getting Steph, who's in this extended prime. KD's still pretty much in his prime. Clay's back. Draymond's there.
I mean, they did it before.
Yeah, I think they would easily be the front runners again.
Yeah. God, what would that do to Durant? Well, how would people
I think
look
he
at
would.
him?
I think he would do it out of spite. Just to be like, oh,
He
you guys
might.
hated it when I did it the first time. I'm going to do it again. I don't think
He
Golden
could.
State would really want that backlash again because I think they're definitely in the like the lighter light.
They're in everybody's
almost.
good graces now.
Exactly. So if they were to then, I don't think Steph would want that again because I feel like he's in a different space right now, and he
I think
shouldn't.
people are talking about him differently now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, regardless of where the two end up, if we just bring it back to Brooklyn's standpoint, what a freaking disaster all of this has been. I mean,
oh, and they are in full on, you know, we are wiping our hands clean of this. We will trade you all of our draft capital. Just take this. Take Ben Simmons, take Kyrie, take KD. We are starting over because that is better than last season. That is so telling.
and do you blame them? I don't.
No.
Not at all.
No, if
Not at all.
I'm sure they're definitely, it seems like they would much rather just let Kyrie leave and keep KD.
Yes.
But then the relationship with Kevin Durant would be because KD and Kyrie are friends. It seemed like they were a package deal going there. Who knows how much they're friends now because Kyrie is talking, he's almost in extensions talk, and KD then requested the trade, and they're almost like not in cahoots with this whole thing. But that is just it's a no-win situation for that organization. Like they have zero power in what's going on because they have invested so much into those two players. And you can't trust Ben Simmons with leading your franchise because the dude hasn't played in over a year and a half.
And that's not to say that he couldn't lead you to the playoffs, but the last time we saw him, I mean, you're just going off of what have you done for me recently, and it hasn't been much. And I think so. Our generation, we've had some really good dynasties and ones that should have happened but never did. So like the Spurs dynasty, we caught like the middle and tail end of. That was for sure a dynasty. We're in the middle of a Golden State dynasty. We saw the Miami Heat one that lasted. It was a little bit shorter.
The LeBron dynasty.
I guess the LeBron dynasty of his own. Yeah. But then you look at, the duo, and I feel bad because Chris Paul is tied to both of them. But you look at that Clippers team, right? That should have won a championship. Definitely should have won one. So that in and of itself, while they had a lot of success, if the end goal is to win a championship, that was a big failure. They definitely should have gotten one. That Houston team with Harden and Chris Paul, they should have definitely won one. They were a game away from going to the finals and probably would have won that finals. So I understand now. While I understand that both of those two teams lasted longer timeline wise, the Brooklyn one just feels so much worse because of the caliber of players that they had and how short it lasted. So in terms of, I don't want to pull back any NBA history because again, stuff past, like 90s and back wouldn't really be stuff that we could have a lot of knowledge on. But from when we were born, which is the late 90s to right now, that feels like the biggest disaster I have seen in my lifetime for an NBA team. Like they definitely should have won a championship. And the fact that they just so wholeheartedly underperformed and had so much drama, it's embarrassing for them. I mean, I don't care, but like,
Yeah, I mean, especially when they had James Harden on the team as well, and it was talked about like is this the greatest collection of offensive talent on one team of all time?
it may have been.
Yeah, that was a genuine, for sure, question. I kind of liken this team to, now that it's seemingly pretty much over, to that LA Lakers team of Kobe, Dwight, Steve Nash, Pau Gasol on that team of, like, that was the super team where you're just putting names together, maybe not necessarily the right time or fit. And then look how that turned out in just one season. That's sort of what this Brooklyn team looks like in a longer length of time. I mean, they maybe could have slipped past Milwaukee a couple of years ago when Milwaukee won the championship, but they ended up not. And it was mostly due to unreliability of their superstars outside of Kevin Durant, except for Kevin played to his standards pretty poorly this season in the postseason. So I mean, it's crazy that the Lakers even want Kyrie. I get he's probably an upgrade over Russell, but the amount of baggage, like, I think Westbrook has a lot less baggage going for him, even though his play has deteriorated so much.
Yeah.
But he didn't make nearly as much noise as Kyrie might make if Kyrie doesn't fit in with LeBron and the Lakers. So I think this is I think it's just bringing on so much problems for the Lakers.
And what a weird look for Kyrie. In the sense that, like, you wanted to leave Cleveland and leave LeBron because you wanted your own team. Well, you got your own team in Boston, and that didn't work out. And now you went with your boy KD, and then that blew up in your face. And now you're crawling back to LeBron. It's like, I don't want to just say that Kyrie is the reason for all of this, because I feel like that's too harsh of a statement, but he is a common denominator of each of these situations.
Especially when we don't know exactly what happened in every locker room. I mean, it could just be coincidental.
Right. So I don't want to say that it's solely his fault, but he plays a role. I mean, just merely on the sense that he was there for all of those instances.
And he was a leader. He was a prominent player.
Yeah. And, although I don't know how you can lead when you don't play. So
he tried.
He did, yeah. But I don't even want to necessarily bring in the vaccine stuff per se.
It was a big thing, though.
It was a big thing, and it hurt the team in the sense that he wasn't available. But I mean, I don't want to sit here and tell anybody that you need to get the vaccine. I mean, I could have my opinion on it, and if I were giving him advice, I would have said, go play for your team. And if I was his teammate, I would be screaming at him, please get vaccinated. We need you on the floor. But at the end of the day, I mean, you can get it or not. That's up to you. So I don't really want to necessarily hold that against him in the whole scheme of things. But I mean, everything else, think about the post-game press conference he had after they got swept against Boston, talking about how him, KD, and the general manager, they're going to rebuild this franchise from the ground up and all that other stuff. And the next day, all the analysts were like, you really think you earned that? Like, you don't deserve a seat at that table. And the delusion of that was very interesting. And then to do a full 180 of, I want to go back with LeBron, that's a weird look. And I'm going to be really interested to see what people say in the long run about Kyrie if that does end up happening.
And it's such a shame, too, because looking back on those years that he was playing with LeBron in Cleveland, I mean, he was so dynamic.
He was awesome
as a scorer. He was box office for that
and
rivalry.
He still had those moments this year.
Definitely. But like everyone, I think, looks at Kyrie Irving a different way because of
for sure.
pretty much everything that happened off of the court. Because he played stellar this year, apart from late in the year.
Yeah,
he was playing money and balls out, and it looked like, oh man, it's Kyrie and KD are enough for this Brooklyn team to make it to the finals if they get anything from Ben Simmons.
Yeah, and even through that Boston series, I mean, even when Boston had a pretty significant lead, it was like, don't count them out. I mean, they still have those two guys. You never know, and it just never manifested itself in anything. So
yeah, I think last thing about this, and I think we should make a put something out on our Instagram, n.t.s.podcast. Did I nail it? Did I nail it? Okay. Something, who would look worse? Kevin Durant joining the Warriors next year, or Ben Simmons coming back next year?
Underscore podcast. There we go.
Oh, I messed it up. Or Ben Simmons not playing next year. Who do you think would get the more hate?
Between Ben Simmons not playing next year and
KD joining the Warriors.
Probably KD. And I think it would look worse for KD because the Warriors also just won a championship.
It looks so bad.
But
I think Ben Simmons is a pretty easy target for people to now hate on.
I think he is too. There's a cat right here. She's been wandering the house this whole time.
Stevie, you get out of here.
And no, don't go up on the desk. But yeah, Ben Simmons is a pretty easy target for most people, but I think people do people dislike Kevin Durant more or Ben Simmons more? I guess that's the question that really would dictate the answer to your question, because I guess I don't have a good sense on who fans dislike more.
Well, I think at that point, if neither player would have any fans, like you would think every opposing fan base may hate Draymond Green, but the Warriors fans love Draymond to death, right? So it's almost like we take that sort of mindset, but then neither player has a home fan base that actually likes them. Because I don't think Warriors fans are going to be like, oh yeah, Kevin Durant's back, cool. I think they would almost hate it because it makes them.
We don't need you. Hi, relax.
Oh, man, she didn't like that take.
No, she didn't.
And then Ben, I don't think why would I wouldn't cheer for Ben if I'm a Brooklyn fan. He hasn't even suited up. He's like Antonio Brown and the Raiders.
Yes.
He got cold feet.
That was on the nose right there. Oh man. Yeah, that made me laugh way harder than it should. But yeah, no, I don't know. Well, yeah, it's a good question. We could put that out there. And then if you're listening, go ahead and answer. I'll put that out sometime either on Friday the 17th or Saturday the 18th. So heads up for that if you're listening and you want to answer that question. I don't know. We'll find out because both of those things could happen.
Yeah.
I know that Ben Simmons, I think reports are out there now that he's feeling really good and is preparing to play.
He got back surgery, didn't he?
Truthfully, I don't know. But I know that he on his social media a little while ago, like a week or two ago, posted that he was feeling really good. So, I mean, good side for him because, having a long-term injury like that, I mean, you would hope that he gets healthy. So, all right. A lot of NBA talk right there. Let's switch gears real quick. Not a ton of NFL news at the moment, except for a slightly big story with Baker Mayfield being traded to Carolina. Not huge news.
No story.
but in the sense that Baker is I guess, high-profile quarterback in the sense that there's normally a lot of coverage around him. I'm not saying he because of his play or anything like that, but there's normally where Baker is, there's a story. And he now goes to Carolina, where I'm assuming he's going to be the starting quarterback. But what that looks like for Carolina, I don't know. I guess it depends on what Baker they get, And to be fair, last season he played last season hurt. So I don't think you can hold that against Baker. The last time he was fully healthy, he led the Browns to a playoff run. If they get that Baker, then great. I mean, he was third in QBR that year, and he can be a productive quarterback, but it's going to be interesting to see what that looks like for Carolina. That's it. I mean, with Tampa Bay there in that division, they're not going to win. And New Orleans is definitely going to be fighting for a wild card spot. So I don't know where Carolina fits into all of that, but I guess Carolina improved in that sense. And at least Baker's off of, Cleveland's payroll.
Yeah, I think Carolina is the second best quarterback in the division now. And that's the trade they had to make. It's either going for Baker or going for Jimmy G, and they made the call for Baker. Taking on a lot of that contract. I think the thing with Baker for me is I think the situation has to be perfect for him to have success. And just based off of what we saw in Cleveland, I mean, when they added a lot of talent around him, he played a lot better and at times excelled. Yep. But then times when they're struggling or missing pieces, he kind of looked like a mess. And Carolina isn't the best spot for us to sit here and be like, yeah, their offense has got it figured out. Not really.
Now, granted, they had one of the best defenses in the league last year. They drafted an offensive lineman really high in the draft this year. I think it was Iquanu, I think. And I mean, if he turns out to be what they hope he'll be, then obviously they make an instant improvement in their offensive line. They have a good defense. But really, you're also counting on the health of Christian McCaffrey. And that, as much of a freak of nature as he is, he hasn't been super healthy relatively recently. So it'll be interesting. And then you have the whole Robbie Anderson situation from a while ago where he, I guess infamously commented on a post, giving his opinion on his thoughts on if Carolina got Baker Mayfield, which was no. But who knows? I mean, I wish him all the best. Hopefully he does good things in Carolina. And poor Sam Darnold. But
he missed his opportunity. I feel like he just kind of missed his opportunity.
He did.
This is Baker's chance, though, if he wants to prove, because if he can find success with Carolina, he's going to get a payday.
Yeah. And you don't normally see a lot of third chances for quarterbacks. I mean, I know Carson Wentz is on his third chance, but you don't see that very often. So he's got to take advantage of this one. Otherwise, it's probably backup city for a long time.
For a former number one pick.
Yeah. All right. So again, that's pretty much the biggest story so far in the NFL as of recent. I'm assuming more news is going to come out about the Deshaun Watson scenario. We've got some movement in that case and all of that stuff with some of the suits being settled, but it's not fully there yet. And no suspension has been kind of handed out yet or anything like that. When that comes out, that'll be huge news because that'll be interesting to see what the punishment is for him. But the NFL is obviously kind of in a standstill right now. The NBA is just got through the draft, working through summer league. MLB will have to get to some baseball next episode when it comes to talking about sports.
We can't talk about baseball. Giants played awful this last week.
So at least expect in the episodes coming forward until some of these major sports pick back up. We'll probably be talking quite a bit about baseball, probably get some F1 in there. We're a closet tennis show, so we'll probably hit some tennis and some golf. and maybe a little more entertainment. But in terms of the NBA and the NFL, we'll hit the big stories, but there are other sports going on right now, so we'll do our due diligence and hit those in the shows going forward. Speaking of what we're going to do going forward, I mentioned entertainment. We never got a chance to talk about the Obi-Wan series and our thoughts on that. I think it ended just relatively recently, about a week ago or so.
Yeah, last Wednesday.
Yeah. So a week removed from the ending of that show, what did you think of that show, of the Obi-Wan show in totality after the final episode?
The final episode saved it for me. I think it was all over the place at times, and I'm just glad they stuck the landing, man. I really wish the series was a little longer so they could really develop a lot of things, because it just went and went and went. But that final fight between Vader and Obi-Wan, that seemed like he was back to his Revenge of the Sith levels, was just really cool to see. And then to see Hayden behind the mask and really get to talk actually in the Darth Vader suit, I think it was really cool. But there's just some parts. I think there's some missed opportunities, but that for me saved it for sure.
Yeah, I think episode 1, I was a huge fan of episode 1. 2 was all right. I know the scene with Vader dragging Ewan through the flames I loved every second of that, except for the very end when he made that weird escape. It was like, that just seemed way too easy. I think the 3rd and 4th episode were okay, but the 5th and 6th episode really kind of pushed it forward, with the climax obviously being the end and that last fight between Hayden and Ewan, and that was a blast. And I think the thing for me that, I guess, my biggest gripe with the show was, when you're taking a character like Obi-Wan and you're making a show just about him. I understand that this was set like 10 years after the 3rd movie. So he was pretty far removed from using any of his, Jedi abilities. I understand there might be a little bit of rust, but if you go back and you watch the Clone Wars, and you watch Rebels or anything like that, you'll know that Obi-Wan was like top tier for Jedi in terms of how strong he was and how well connected he was with the Force. So I think for me, like the Fat Thor thing in Avengers, I think that Obi-Wan being kind of underpowered and weak, that lasted too long for me, and I think they hit that too hard. I wouldn't have minded a little bit of rust showing in the first 2 episodes, but it didn't need to carry all the way, because it almost seemed like he was afraid to pull out his lightsaber, or afraid to use the Force, and that he was so disconnected from it. And it was like, okay, maybe it'll take you a little bit, but like the whole show up until like the last like 2 episodes, or really the last episode, it's like I think they played that a little too heavy in that sense.
Yeah, they almost relied on it as a gimmick and a crutch for the show, for things to happen. Because if you think about, like, if he just snapped back into it in the 2nd episode, like, so Leia would have been completely fine on all the run. Like, she would have been, and he's skilled now with a blaster too, so they could have added that with his lightsaber skills. And
the 3rd sister should never have had a problem with her.
No.
Like, there's no way. No way.
He jumped down in the middle of the droid army to fight Grievous.
Yeah,
we're talking about that.
So where's that Obi-Wan? That's what I mean. Like, it wasn't, relatively speaking, that wasn't that long ago in Jedi years.
I know. I think we talked about this when we spoke about it, but it was like he was probably like 40s, close to 50s. No, he was probably like mid 30s, early 40s in Revenge of the Sith, maybe.
Probably.
All that Jedi training, you don't just forget in 10 years,
Yeah.
even if you don't pick it up. Like all those reps, if you will, are just going to be like muscle memory at that point, which I thought was like, okay, that's what disappointed me about the first Darth Vader fight.
Yeah.
How inept he looked.
Yeah, and I didn't even mind Vader winning that fight. Like have him beat him. Have the rust kind of still be there a little bit, but it didn't need to seem so drastic. Like he was running from Darth Vader, like literally running away. And it was like, don't make him run, because that's literally never been in his character ever in any form of show. He's never been a guy to just run away. So like, again, I talked to my dad about this. I go back to one specific episode in the Clone Wars where he's fighting Darth Maul and Darth Maul's apprentice, who's supposed to be like stronger than him, at the same time, and he wins. And it's like, that doesn't, like, that's the character that you're bringing into this show. Don't have him running away from Vader. Like, that's not who he is.
Yeah. I think it was a lot of the shock. I think the best thing to come out of the show is the like memes now of Qui-Gon is the only character to die to a lightsaber thrust to the chest, because Reva got thrusted twice, and the head Inquisitor survived it too, and it was like Qui-Gon's just sitting here, what the heck is going on? I could have got up after that.
Yeah. Again, but maybe that just comes from who stabbed you. I mean, Darth Maul. It just gets you in the right spot.
Do you want to see a second season of this show?
Yes, give me more of Obi-Wan. I told you, he's like a top 5 movie character for me of all time. I will watch anything that Ewan does as Obi-Wan. That doesn't mean I have to like it, but I will always, while the show itself in totality, maybe I think was like a 7-ish for me, 7.5. He is always fun to watch. I always enjoy watching him on screen, even if he is running away from Darth Vader. He does it so well that I just, I love Ewan as Obi-Wan. So have him play the character for the rest of his life. I don't care. I'll still tune in to watch him play that character. And I know that Hayden and Ewan both said that they would love to do a second season. So they both love their characters. So, and why wouldn't they?
It was so cool to have that little flashback to like Attack of the Clones time.
Yeah.
2 of them training. I think that was really cool.
Yeah.
To let Hayden be Anakin again. I think they should have used that more.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
They really leaned into it.
Because we didn't really see Hayden all that much.
No.
Yeah.
I think 2 episodes. That's it. Yeah, I'd be excited to see the show just because it's Obi-Wan. I mean, I think he's the best Star Wars character for me. He's my favorite Star Wars character.
Oh yeah.
Growing up, but this show, it was impossible for it to live up to the hype with how long it's been rumored to have been in the works. It went from like a movie to a TV show to a movie back to a TV show, like all these things, and there was no way they were going to please everyone. I think it's just, they just need to let it like maturate a little bit and stop rushing it. Like the fact that I knew that it was 6 episodes in the back of my mind was like, okay, things are just it's gonna be happening here.
It's gonna happen fast, yeah.
And I think that kind of hurt the show a little bit. Yeah,
at that point, just make it into a movie. If there's that little content. At least what the show did, and I enjoyed the show. I really did. I enjoyed my time watching it. There was really the first 2 episodes were good. The first one was better than the second one. The last 2 episodes were good. The last one was better than the 5th one. The 2 in the middle were okay. My least favorite episode was that underwater like prison episode. That episode was felt like a letdown. But yeah, I mean, at least it gave us some really cool Star Wars moments. Like the scene with Vader dragging him through the flames. That was awesome. The final fight was really cool. Seeing Qui-Gon again, that was really fun. Hayden as Vader, that was awesome. So it gave us some really cool Star Wars moments. So for that, I'm happy. But yeah, if they do it again, make it longer.
Why did Obi-Wan let Darth Vader live again? I think that was a can of worms that they should just not have opened up.
Yeah, well, he had to because he's alive in episode 4, 5, and 6.
No,
so you knew that was coming, but
of course he had to.
Yeah, right.
But
I
they
don't
should
know.
have had like a fighter come down and Obi-Wan like had to leave quickly. Like he was like, oh yeah, I know Anakin, who's now Darth Vader. I've acknowledged that, has just maliciously killed thousands upon millions of life forms pretty much throughout the galaxy.
Yeah.
It just, you know what? I just care about Luke and Leia at this point. That's it. No, he's always talking about I will do what I must. No, you don't, Obi-Wan. You're just all talk. This is twice now. 2 strikes.
Well, in all fairness, Anakin should have died in the third one. he was about as burnt as you could possibly be. So I mean, he should have died. And this one,
bleeding out just doesn't exist.
I guess,
in the Star Wars universe.
And there, yeah. So even Qui-Gon looking at that, like, really, like, like that's he can't go out like that. But yeah, he really had no excuse for not killing him. I mean, Vader buried him under rocks. So why don't you bury him under some rocks, or at least hurt him enough to make it feel like, okay, like he's not going to do this again.
And I didn't get that part either. Why Vader just left.
I did. Okay, so yes, that was my only gripe with that last.
I was
fight,
like, wouldn't you want to? Wouldn't you want to stab him? You're like, oh, the rocks, they got him. That's my vindication right now.
As soon as he did that, I turned to Bree. I was like, all he's gonna do is hold him up. That's funny. That's hilarious that you say that, because that was my first thought. I'm so mad I didn't bring that up. But I looked to her. I was like, he's just got to hold him up, and then they pan to him underneath it, holding the rocks up. I was like, gee, it's not like he has the force or anything like that.
I guess 10 years didn't really allow Anakin to really learn from his ways.
Yeah, which, by the way, how over the course of 2 days is he barely able to lift Leia, and now he's got 1,000 pounds, tons of rocks over him, and you know, he's fine. Let me just regroup real quick, and then I'll throw him up.
Because he reconnected.
Right, but again, like, that's what I mean by throwing him so far away from knowing that from like connecting, and then all of a sudden, yeah, I got this. Here comes this hailstorm behind me of rocks.
Yeah, he was a badass.
He was. The final fight was awesome. Except for that, yeah, I agree. I don't know why Vader just didn't fly down it. He could have.
He dragged him. He drug him. I guess it's dragged. Dragged him through flames because he wanted to see him be tortured.
That felt like more of an attempt to kill him.
And then he was like, "Oh yeah, I'll just throw this like rock." Put him through an earthquake or something.
Yeah.
It didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I thought it was really cool. First off, that fight was just so good. That was easily got to be a top 5 lightsaber duels throughout the series. The part where Obi-Wan like bashes Vader's chest plate with his lightsaber hilt, I thought was so cool that they did that.
You don't see that often with them actually using the hilt. I guess not something I would have ever thought to put in, but it was a really neat touch. But yeah, I mean, give me more Obi-Wan just because of Ewan. So
yeah, I think next they gotta bring Darth Vader back. They gotta bring Mace Windu back, because we're all just waiting for him to show up because he's alive.
He's gotta be.
He's gotta be. I need Samuel L. Jackson back.
But I mean, they have so many different things that they could do. I don't know where Cad Bane is right now, if he's alive or not in the certain timeline. He'd be a fun character to watch Obi-Wan go up against. I think Maul's dead. I think you said Maul was dead.
No, he's alive.
And at this point in the okay, so well, they have the opportunity to do that. Oh, because I guess Rebels takes place.
Yeah,
after,
it takes place
right
before New Hope.
Much. Okay, so so he's alive at this point. So they could go down that vein. So at that point, I would imagine they would have Cad Bane still in there. I mean, he just appeared in the Mandalorian. I mean, not in the Mandalorian, Boba Fett. So they clearly have that character cast. They have a lot of things that they can do. A lot of different stories, and there are so many different places in the Star Wars universe that they could go. I mean, they can make something up if they wanted to. So, although eventually they're going to run out of like timeline, and they're going to need to move off of the Skywalker stuff.
Oh, you mean we didn't cover this 1 week of Obi-Wan on Tatooine? Well, nothing really happened, but we'll give you a show about it.
But yeah, we'll give you a show about it. How he ended up in the cave.
Yeah, that's what we need to know.
Yeah, or how he got a job harvesting the beast meat or whatever. What was the interview process like?
No prior experience, sir. Ben, you're a little old, sir.
Work history. Oh, I can see you served under Master Yoda.
Under references, you seem to have Qui-Gon. Is he still an able recipient for a call?
I'm sorry, I haven't updated that in a while. Haven't been looking for a job.
Senator Bail Organa, really? How do you know him?
Oh man. Well, let's see what happens going forward, because they both, like I said, Hayden and Ewan both said that they want to keep doing more. So who knows when that'll come out. So all right. Well, that'll wrap it for us on 138. Again, like I said, we've got definitely a boys review coming next week, and the craziness that is that show. 11 Thunder review, definitely for me. Hopefully you're gonna get to it by then. I think you said Sunday, right?
Yeah, it depends when we're gonna plan on filming, but I should have time next week.
So we should have those two coming down, and then possibly some baseball and some F1, some golf, some tennis. Got a bunch of different stuff we can do. So
yeah, we got Wimbledon this weekend, the Open next weekend. I'm sure one F1 Grand Prix in time before we record. Yeah.
Well, if you all stuck around, or whoever stuck around to the end of this episode, we really do appreciate it. We will see you all next week. Have a fantastic week, and yeah, toodles.
Toodles.